Hello, everyone, and welcome to your next talk of the day. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Next up, we have Anthony Chang, and he is the Chief Intelligence Innovation Officer, Medical Director, Medical Intelligence Innovation Institute, Medical Director at CHOC Heart Failure Program for CHOC Children's. And his talk today is entitled Common Misconceptions of AI in Medicine, a Clinician Data Scientist Perspective. So please give a warm virtual welcome to Anthony Chang. Anthony, you can come on out and join us on our virtual stage here, and you can share your slides, and I'll just turn my camera off and you can take it away.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me. I wish I was there in person with you, but given what's happening, I think this is the best we can do. So I want to share with you some of my I think my understanding of common misconceptions in artificial intelligence in medicine. So as most of you know, artificial intelligence healthcare. This is a short video getting a biopsy of a brain tumor.
Anthony, sorry, your sound cut out for a second. I just wanted to see if you could, if there's any volume you could turn up for a second.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
So the surgeon will have an answer in terms of the stage of the tumor and recommend the appropriate therapy. So the other reason that artificial intelligence is so important right now is that we have tremendous information overload. The medical knowledge doubling time is about 60 days. And if you just look at the COVID-19 situation, we've had, I just checked this morning, we had 40,000 publications, which is 1 per 7 minutes. So just impossible for clinicians to keep up. So one misconception is AI can definitely be a big factor in helping with COVID-19. The issue is that we can't just use AI alone, and we need good public health strategy as well. So if you think of in the war with COVID-19, public health strategies like armor and AI, as well as innovation, are like weapons. You really need both to go into war. The other problem with COVID-19 is, as a challenge for AI, is that pandemics, just like a lot of biomedical issues, are very, very complex. It's highly unpredictable, and it's very, very difficult to pin it down with data science alone. And with a lot of engineering problems, even with SpaceX going to the space station, it's a complicated project. It can be deconstructed into predictable parts. So there's a big difference between, I think, healthcare and something as complicated. And obviously, you can tie the two together with sensors and feedback. So that's an exciting area. So if you just look at, again, the pandemic, there's very little data available, especially in the early months, and yet it's a very complex problem. So you really, really rely on humans to really make decisions, at least in the first stage. Viruses, just like the pandemic, how we treat pandemics, could really be a self-organizing entity in the form of a complex system. I think another common misconception is AI just like a black box. You hear that very often, but if you look at how clinicians think and make decisions, we can also say in defense of machines that the human brain is actually like a pink bag, and not a whole lot is understood about how we make decisions. So I just want to say a few words about explainability versus interpretability. I think we talk a lot about how AI should be explainable and how explainable AI is really necessary. I think as a clinician, I think we'll settle for interpretability. We don't necessarily need to know all the nuances of machine learning or deep learning. Just as a quick example, I'm a cardiologist, and I don't know all the engineering aspects and details of a pacemaker, but I'm comfortable working with a pacemaker as long as it's functioning well and doesn't fail the patient, and that's interpretability. So just enough to allow it to be functional. Another misconception is AI is impossible to learn. If you look at this knowledge map of artificial intelligence, and these are courses I took at Stanford about a decade ago in my quest to be a data scientist. You can see that there are many, many topics within different knowledge domains to learn. But I think if you look at the data, information, knowledge, intelligence pyramid, I think even if you don't want to spend time and effort to learn a lot of artificial intelligence, you can certainly help out by understanding data in healthcare and medicine and how it needs to be better structured, better defined, and better organized and stored. I think it's also good for all of us to think about leaving your comfort zone, and we go from comfort to fear to learning and growth zone. And I definitely felt like I was in the growth zone at Stanford during my years studying data science. And here's a wonderful dinner picture of my Harvard professor, Dr. Richard Van Praag, who at the age of 91 is still, believe it or not, learning new mathematical expressions for congenital heart disease. So I think it's just so good to leave your comfort zone and learn another dimension. It's also important to think that as someone who has knowledge in both areas, like clinical medicine and data science, you can actually have a unique perspective. And this is a driver, Formula One driver named Jim Hill, who actually was an engineer, a Caltech engineer as well as a Formula One driver. And he was the first one to come up with the concept of a rear wing, which you see often now in Formula One racing. So there's something, I think, unique about a dual perspective. Another misconception is AI will replace us. I think the media certainly plays that up for headlines. If you look at technology and jobs, some of us may remember the ATM when it first came out in 1970s and 80s. And if you look at the number of ATMs, and people predicted that tellers will be a thing of the past. In fact, the number of tellers have actually gone up, as well as the total number of people that work at banks, because you simply have a lot more branches and a lot more need for humans to be staffing those branches. And if you also look at machine intelligence and the brain intelligence or human intelligence, and look at how cardiologists and radiologists function, it's hard to really think that we're going to be out of a job, because we do a lot more than perception. So if you look at the job of a cardiologist, perception, which is what computers do, medical image interpretation and integrative data analytics, compared to the cognition part, which computers cannot yet do very well. So that's complex decision making and creative problem solving and operation of just manual tasks. We actually have a lot more on the cognition side than perhaps we realize. And the radiologist's job is almost the same. So in other words, I think the perception part that the machine can do now will help the cardiologist and radiologist, but it won't totally replace everything that we have to do. Yet another misconception is AI is mostly or all hype. And I think we're at the peak of inflated expectations on a hype cycle. We're about to come down to perhaps a period of disillusionment, and hopefully eventually reach a plateau of productivity that's going to be very, very impressive, I think, a decade from now. So human beings tend to think of the future in the orange line, which is a straight trajectory, but technological productivity actually is the green line that you see. It's an S-shaped curve. So we tend to overestimate what a new technology like AI can do and underestimate in the long term. So I think in 5 to 10 years, we'll be at the crossover. And I think 10 years from now, we'll look back and say, it's amazing what AI can do. And also, I think we look at various different types of artificial intelligence. There's assisted, augmented, and autonomous. And most people are a little bit concerned about the autonomous type of artificial intelligence, because that's when computers are making decisions on their own. And people worry that it might come into healthcare and medicine. But guess what? It's already here in the form of IDXDR, which is a retinal image automated deep learning interpretation tool that's being used. So it's already here. We just have to find ways of really make sure that it's safe. And there is a misconception that deep learning is always going to be better than humans. Well, that's certainly true in certain aspects, but eventually, as the second wave or the deep learning wave is plateauing, we're going to need a third wave in healthcare and medicine, which is using cognitive architectures, which will have to be using the clinician's wisdom and insight to help with artificial intelligence, because we need that kind of human insight and creativity to understand how relationships exist with objects. So if you think of deep learning as a statistical period, the cognitive period will be more contextual. We'll be thinking of how things look. And this is a type of cognitive architecture called recursive cortical network. I know it's a lot of fancy words, but essentially it builds relationships between images, which is how human visual cortex can look at things in 3 dimensions. I think another thing that machines can take advantage of humans is in the form of swarm intelligence. And humans can band together and work much closer together. So this is a couple of video clips I took at the Monterey Aquarium. You can see right now we're on not working as closely together, but on the right, perhaps on working much more cohesively. And there's also now still some residual clinician versus data scientists and not working together. I think we ought to be working together much more closely. This is a datathon that I was part of the faculty for with my colleague and friend Leo Selly. So 100 clinicians teamed up with 100 data scientists working side by side, literally, in solving clinical research problems together. I think that's going to be the future of medicine, is not machine versus humans, but machines and humans working together. So we're in a transition phase, and this is a funny picture I took in the restroom where I think there's modern and existing technology, or SQ for status quo. And I was just curious and stood in the corner and watched people approaching this dilemma here. And 9 out of 10 of the first 10 people took the paper towel just because they're more comfortable with that technology. Whereas I think the more modern technology is just going to take time to have people get used to. So right now, I think clinicians and data scientists are in a symbiosis. We kind of are starting to accept each other in this space. I think I would be very excited when we reach synergy in the next 3 to 5 years, in which we really take advantage of each other's knowledge domain and how we work. And I can't wait until about a decade or more from now when we reach what I call a convolution, in which a third and important new knowledge is obtained from combining and synergizing and convoluting both medical and data sciences. And I think one common misconception is we need more access to healthcare data, or just need more health data, because it's so important to have all these knowledge areas combined in an information stack so we can go to precision medicine. But I think what we need is not necessarily just a lot more health data, but I think we need actually a new type of database called hypergraph database. And what's in the future for us? I think embedded AI is going to be really big. So this is the internet of everything, in which everything is being a little bit smarter and not just being connected. Another big aspect of the future of healthcare and medicine and AI is drug discovery. So rather than wait months and years for a new drug, I think right now, minutes and hours and days, we can see using AI in the technique called gradient descent in deep learning to basically guess how proteins look. And so the blue and green are both real and machine-derived protein structures. You can see that they're pretty close. Another area I think is going to be what I call intelligent reality, not just extended reality, but using AI on top of different types of extended reality like augmented and virtual reality. And lastly, as I mentioned, I think devices will get a lot smarter this coming decade. The amount of money that will be invested in this space will more than quadruple in the next few years in terms of building AI into healthcare wearable devices. So the arc is leaving, so trying to at least understand it, if not adopt AI. And I think we're going to go from an evidence-based medicine to intelligence-based medicine paradigm in the next few years, but probably not all at the same time, but in various different steps. And so if that graph was a little too complicated for you, evidence-based medicine is what's above the surface, and intelligence-based medicine will be what's beneath the surface. So just like the pandemic, artificial intelligence in healthcare medicine, probably Winston Churchill said it best, now this is not the end, this is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. And I have 2 young daughters who will definitely benefit from using AI in healthcare. And if you're more interested as a clinician, we have started a medical intelligence society to focus on AI in healthcare and medicine, and all are welcome. And also for those of you who just look for more education and a certification, we've launched the American Board of Artificial Intelligence in Medicine, or ABIM. And here's the URL for that. We can actually have our first review course and certification this coming October. And also I'm part of AI Med, which is a multimedia platform with a lot of different resources. Here's the URL. Many talks from previous years. And we're going to have our big meeting on December 9th to the 12th of this year, and with focus on extended reality and AI. And my book is on the left. There's a journal of the same name that's launched, both by Elsevier, so feel free to explore those resources. I want to thank my donor, who is the granddaughter of Walt Disney, Michelle Lund, who believed in my vision of AI in a healthcare system, and my many friends and colleagues and mentors at Stanford School of Medicine. And I think this has been a very difficult time, but in the depth of winter, according to Albert Camus, I finally learned that within me late in invincible summer. And here's my contact information. So thank you, everybody. Let me check and see if there are questions. Okay, some comments about audio, apologize for that. Question about where does someone start in learning about AI in healthcare? I think there's not a whole lot of available resources on the internet other than just artificial intelligence in general, but I think you can certainly check out the AI Med website. As I said, the American Board of AI Medicine will be putting together a review course, a 2-day comprehensive review course that will be available, and it's relatively inexpensive compared to many others out there. And we'll have anyone from a high school student up can really take this review course and get certified in AI as an AI expert in healthcare and medicine. So, and the URL for that is www.ab, and that's American Board of AIM, or AI in Medicine. ABAIM.org is the website. And then the AIMed website is ai-med.io, where you can get a lot of resources. By the way, the intelligence-based medicine book, it's not a light read, but I think trying to explain things from a dual perspective of a clinician as well as a data scientist, I think everyone can hopefully gain insight from the book. And it is available now on Amazon and as well as the Elsevier website. So it's reduced now to right about $100. So it's really, I think, a good reference with 100 different authors writing commentaries in addition to what I wrote for explaining AI and healthcare. There's a question here about about the future of AI chatbots. I just wrote a newsletter about that yesterday, actually. I think there's a great future. If you look at low-risk tasks that virtual assistants can do, I think it's relatively free of controversies. But once we start getting into more sophisticated tasks and higher risk tasks, like recommending medications or recommending first screening tests, I think that's going to be with some challenge, because I think people are going to be very careful about letting even very intelligent virtual assistants deal with common medical problems. I think there are a lot of nuances about human language that is very difficult to perhaps be understood. Even with GPT-3 now from OpenAI, I think there's still a lot of nuances that is very, very challenging for even the best NLP tools. Someone just asked me about the book that I mentioned. It's a book that I had the privilege of authoring. It's called Intelligence-Based Medicine, and the subtitle is Artificial Intelligence and Human Cognition in Clinical Medicine and Healthcare. I didn't want to just talk about machine and deep learning, which obviously is a big section in the book, and I wanted to us think about understanding human cognition and how we interpret things as humans, not just data scientists, but as humans and clinicians. And I thought that would be a good balance to the book. So again, the name of the book is Intelligence-Based Medicine, and it's available on Amazon right now. And it's also available on the Elsevier website. The journal, someone asked about the journal. The journal is also called Intelligence-Based Medicine, and anyone and everyone can submit manuscripts. And it's especially designed for those clinicians and non-data scientists who may not yet understand all the intricacies and nuances of data science, but would like to see how data science and artificial intelligence can be deployed. So it's much more on the application side than the absolute tiny little formulae and codes for artificial intelligence. So we're going to be launching our inaugural issue this fall, and very excited that we have some really exciting authors that are already submitting sort of topics of interest. And the first issue will be dedicated to the healthcare workers as well as friends and colleagues in dealing with COVID-19. So the first issue will be how artificial intelligence will be incorporated in future global health crises like a pandemic. So it's an exciting inaugural issue, and the birth of a new issue is always very exciting. And I think the data science and those articles are actually quite good already. So I'm very excited about that journal. So again, the book and the journal have the same name, Intelligence-Based Medicine. And there's also a lot of, someone asked about resources. There's also on the AI Med website, it has a lot of useful resources, blogs, conversations. There's an academic magazine called AIM, AIM, and you can download. There are also many video clips from the previous year's meetings. We've had about 6 or 7 years of meetings since the inception of these big meetings. This year will be virtual in December, so I hope to see you there. And thank you for the opportunity to speak at AI4 2020. Goodbye, everybody.